even like the increased adoption, that doesn't necessarily mean increased PLS price. The increased PLS price mainly comes down to, are people buying and hoarding it? Um, and so those are kind of two separate, entirely different use cases. There's like using PulseChain, the chain, and then hoarding PLS, the token. And so those may not even, so like in terms of competition with other chains, there's direct kind of head-to-head competition of, where are the high demand shitcoins going to be hosted. But then there's, separate from that, there's just like the underlying token price and value. And in that case, there's competition not only against other EVM things, there's competition against real estate, Bitcoin, Tesla stock, Meta, S&P. Like, so, we're just treating the token as the investment. And so they're kind of two different ones where, where there's like competition on kind of both fronts there. And so I think like probably like they're kind of both one and the same in some sense, where like if there's lots of opportunity on PulseChain that people are interested in, then that's more people that are associating PulseChain and PLS with success. And, they may be, viewing it, if they like, okay, here I am, like, spending gas and using this chain, then perhaps this is a good investment to make. So there's some overlap there, but in general, the kind of use case of PulseChain as a chain versus PLS as an investment, those are kind of separate in a lot of ways.
Well, what are the ways that people to hoard PLS? I guess maybe what is best for price, and what would you see that's happening? What would you like to see, or what would be things that you're seeing that's like, okay, this means people are starting to hoard it more, hang on to it, or otherwise, is it just the bridge activity? Is it people locking up in protocols? Is it validators? Like, what are different ways that would make PulseChain's price performance better because people are hoarding it instead of selling it or just not buying it?
Yeah, so I mean, so like buying PLS to have a validator, that's like an example of buying and then holding for an extended period of time. And then so whatever the turnover is of like having your validator and then no longer having it and then selling that, like that's kind of that time frame between purchase and sale that kind of matters. And the longer that time frame, the better. And so so validating, locking it in protocols to an extent, but it kind of gets unwound. Like, for instance, if you lock your PLS in something to then extend credit against it, in that moment you've bought the PLS, you now have locked it. But then in the event of some type of liquidation where, in that case, it's then, getting sold, or, it gets transferred to someone who may now sell it. And so that one is, for the duration that loan may be active, it's kind of hoarded. But then, when you go to pay off the loan, it's, are you paying it off by selling your underlying collateral? Are you paying it off by depositing new money in and that new money you're putting in to now pay your loan off? That's now absorbed demand, because, if you're now depositing, new dollars into the system so that you can pay off credit you've previously extended, then those new dollars that are obviously free to be allocated, those are going to paying off debt. They're not going to buying assets and increasing the price. So you're effectively buying back your collateral from yourself. So those ones, probably to a lesser degree than the validation perspective, kind of have that upwards momentum. But I mean, probably outside of that, probably just people buying it on a 2 to 4 year time horizon, like that, just like not related to any type of protocol or any other type of activity, just like simply buying and holding the token. That kind of drives it. And it's something that you can kind of see in Ethereum's history. The Ethereum price chart has it's mainly driven actually by, at least in 2017, a big part of the run up was because there were all these ICOs going on kind of like sacrifices in a way where but what was I think unique about the Ethereum like ICOs was that you had to buy Ethereum for that. Some of these new sacrifices, they'll accept anything because they're kind of like off chain. Like usually the ICOs were like deposited into the contract. The contract would mint you the token. But some of these sacrifices, it's like, they take anything, and usually the funds that are put in there become sell pressure. That's like with Ethereum, these old ICOs, it's like on the way up, you saw the Ethereum price just going up in general because like Bitcoin and crypto was going up. And then there's that added layer of demand for Ethereum where you're buying the Ethereum in order to put into an ICO. And then it was almost like double amplified because then rather than instantly selling, those ICO teams were then putting those ICO proceeds into other ICOs. And so like that turnover between when that Ethereum was originally bought by the person who first got in the ICO to when the ICO team then turned around and was selling the Ethereum, like that time frame was couple months long. And that really caused that big blow off top in Ethereum back in 2017. And so, like kind of that cyclical activity where there's like a lot of demand for the ICO and that caused demand for Ethereum. But then as those ICO teams started selling the Ethereum, then that kind of like undid like the upwards price movement from the ICO, people buying the Ethereum to get in the ICO. So like it's kind of probably there's going to be some similar effect there. But what's kind of different about our situation is that so much demand was absorbed in these sacrifices before PulseChain existed. And so we didn't really get to see that on the PLS chart because it's like how much was raised in sacrifices, like non-RH
2 or 3
sacrifices,
billion
like before
oh
PulseChain existed.
I was just thinking about how much for the PulseChain and PulseX. It was like 2 or 3 billion or so, but
Yeah, so like excluding those ones and just like the or I guess PulseX should count in that. So that, and that's a huge amount. Like that was, but I mean a lot of it was hex from like OA and all that. But so it's kind of, but whatever the amount of like user supplied funds into that, it's like had the PulseX sacrifice taken place and you had to mint with PLS, it's like we could have experienced some upward, so like that's something that we haven't had, and we haven't like there's kind of been some sacrifice here and there, but like in general, those types of like capital formation events just are much larger when prices are up. Like there's very little room for that, like very low appetite for that right now because of just how, just how
broke we
there
are.
haven't been any big breakouts from that model yet. And so but people have a short memory and things kind of change and prices are higher. So perhaps there will be a wave of those, but that's something that we haven't had yet. But that is something that can cause like a big boom in the PLS is like if there are, some whatever the new like acronym thing is that people want to ape into. If like one of the requisite steps for that is to buy PLS, then you get, like that, like we can experience something that Ethereum had that in 2017 and then again in 2020 with all the DeFi stuff. And there's kind of a resurgence of kind of ICO like things.